Well, welcome everybody, and good evening from Ohio. As always, I hope you are having a fantastic morning, day, afternoon, evening, night, whatever your time zone or sleep schedule dictates. We are back with another Tech Talk Thursday, kind of working our way through some of the topics we started last week. I'm still and many, as I said last week, in many cases because I just started teaching a class on collaboration tools, network collaboration tools, and related topics. So I'm still kind of working my way through some of the video tools and some of the aspects of playing around with video. As always, let's welcome PX Slip. Hello.
Evening.
And see if any updates on the streaming tool project.
Not this week. Let's just say that a certain game has taken over my life a little bit, and I have been barely working, let alone doing side projects. So I'm embarrassed to admit that hopefully next week I will be able to report back something more useful.
No worries. I know exactly the game, and if you're wondering, you'll get to see it in just a moment because my sample video
right.
is a recording of said game because I played that as well. It's an interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. The game is Path of Exile. Well, as I said, you'll see just a minute long, 2 minute long
If
shot.
you follow me, you might have seen me go live a few times over the weekend.
Right. And I do stream it as well, but not on this channel. I stream it on the Ancient One, the Ancient One 55. I need to link that off of my page here, I guess. But anyway, it's an interesting dynamic because that game sort of resets every 3 months or so with new content and basically everybody, if they want to, gets to start over in a new context. Like some other games that do wipes or set up new servers, and it's kind of like that. And that happened when was that? I can't remember when I was like
Friday.
A week, right? Like past last Friday, right?
Yep, Friday at 2 p.m.
So so it's been kind of an interesting few days since everybody's on that game. All right, so what I was curious about, and what obviously has a lot of impact on basically whether it's streaming like we're doing now or video conferencing collaboration type platforms like Teams or Zoom or what have you. We talked about last week. We sort of explored some of the audio quality, audio encoding, but also talked a little bit about video quality. And so I was curious about the tools, the ability to get information beyond what we looked at last week. And so that's kind of my intent today, is to sort of play around with. In particular, one of the tools, ffmpeg, and its subsidiary tools, but then also an open source video editor, just to kind of play around with a couple of things. But basically, trying to sort of understand, again, not from a video producer's point of view, which I'm not, but from a networking professional's point of view, as I put restrictions on, or my network puts restrictions on streaming or near real-time transmission of video, what are the right ways to adapt? How do I work with the content creators to create the best experience in the network environment available? So a couple of things about sort of my search for that kind of knowledge, I guess. So I guess let me start out. Hop in here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this sample video that I recorded. And I'm not going to run it with. I don't think they have the desktop audio on, and I'm not going to turn it on. Not terribly important. and just we're just going to look at the video. So what I did is I recorded this with, on purpose, relatively high quality settings in OBS. So I used OBS. I was not streaming, so I was not constrained by the network, just by the capabilities of my machine. And so I went for a relatively high quality recording. So we start with something that's pretty high quality, and then we kind of work our way down from there. And just to give you an idea, and there's some other files in here in this. Let's see what is that? There we go. So there's some other files in here, but the one I'm interested in is this guy here. The MP4. I was playing around earlier today with a couple different encodings, so we'll create some more of those. So this thing created a it's not quite 2 minutes and about 400 megabits. 400 megabytes of data. So I guess the first thing we can do, well, let's start by looking at it first, I guess. Let me get rid of this. We'll put this up. The only good news here is that I didn't actually die, so that's a good thing. PXLib knows that I have a tendency to die a lot more than he does. But you can sort of see so Path of Exile is an ARPG. So we're going to be jumping around here, and on purpose kind of wander around to places where there's not a whole lot going on. And then here, here things get a little bit more busy on the screen. PXLib, you were asking me about my my damage or lack thereof. You can sort of see what it's doing or not doing.
Oh yeah. Oof.
This is a little bit before we did some of the tweaking, but as you can tell, I could use some of your help.
Yeah, we'll play with that.
So if you want to see more bad gameplay, I stream on another channel occasionally where you can see that. For the purposes of this stream, what we want to do, of course, is sort of have a video that has some variation, right? So sometimes things like now things are relatively static. I'm moving around a little bit, so the frame shifts. There's some aspects of the frame, like my little insert there, that is static. And yeah, so I expect that the codecs will have some variability here about how what it takes to actually encode this video. And so this is pretty much it. So then now we have a very static kind of bit of information. So let's see. There are a couple, and I was playing around with this earlier. Media information, was that it? Yeah. So let me let this run again in the background. There should be a way of, I can hear it, so it's kind of there we go. I'll turn that off for myself. So in here, sort of see we can get some of the so it looks like we're content bit rate is jumping somewhere around 24 megabits per second to up in the 40 megabits per second. So it's clearly variable, right? So this is sort of where I started, and I said, what do I do with this? How do I get something that's a bit more actionable? So let me shut this off. So that's our little sample video here, and so we know it's it's a high quality encode. And by the way, obviously, I have sort of a conundrum here, right? I'm streaming in 1080 resolution at a particular bit rate. So any video I put up, you can't actually see the real quality or lack thereof. Actually, I think you'll be able to see the lack of quality if we force the video to too low. But obviously anything you can see compared to what I'm looking at is going to be constrained by the stream. So this is not super fair. And at some point, I think I'll post these sample videos somewhere. So if anybody's interested in taking a look at that, you can. All right. So so one of the things we looked at last time was this media info program. Pop this guy over here and drag this in here. And let's take a look and see what that tells us. All right, and so it's an mpeg4 encode. It's an mpeg4 container. The video is an AVC codec, so the H.264 codec. It's 1 minute and 55 seconds, variable bit rate. So I'm not sure what the maximum bit rate here is. I don't believe that because we saw it. They saw the player showing us more than that, and it says the bit rate is 30 megabits per second. So I'm not sure what the maximum bit rate is. I think that's an artifact of we're using some old programs to examine this stuff, but it's just one of those things where I really don't know what what that relationship is. I believe that bit rate is right, and we'll play around with it in just a second, and I'll show you why I think that's correct. It's a 30 frames per second. All the other stuff we had looked at, and I pretty much left everything else. I left pretty much everything else at the defaults when I was recording the video. So let's. Whoops. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. There we go. So let me take that one off. So I was just kind of curious. Let's figure this out real quick. So this is this file is 400 and let's call it 431 megabytes. So 431,000 kilobytes. So times 8. So that's the number of bits, and the video is a minute 55 long. So keep me honest here. It's 115 seconds, right?
Yes, that sounds correct to me. I can do basic math.
So this is why. So this is why I think the bit rate entry in the media. Viewer was right. Right? So this translates to roughly 30 megabits per second. God, I'm going to get myself confused here. 30 megabits per second. All right, so this is clearly not something we would want to stream. It's it's good quality, and it'd be sort of so I'm curious about a number of things. First of all, when we looked at the statistics in the VLC player, it certainly it clearly showed us that the bit rate is variable and was varying sort of between the low 20s and up to the 40s maybe. And I think I mentioned this last week. There's an old tool called Bitrate Viewer, and a lot of people are still using it. Everybody acknowledges that you have to sort of get an old executable from a third-party site because the developers long since abandoned that project and moved on. I really don't want to do that. I just feel super uncomfortable installing that kind of executable. And in any case, I want something. I want to work with something that has a little bit more modern, support, and therefore maybe expandable, and it's something we can actually work with. So the question then is, what are some other tools, and the primary low-level tool that everybody uses, that's kind of underlying a lot of video editors, a lot of encoding and encoding platforms, transcoding platforms, is a tool called ffmpeg, which I've looked at before, and I've always said, good Lord, this thing is complicated, I don't want to learn it, and went on. Moved on, right? So this time I said I really want to learn how to do that. And so the book I showed last week mentioned uses ffmpeg examples on and off, and mentioned another book. I'll just kind of show it here real quick. It's called ffmpeg Basics. Looks like this. And I'll put a link on on the Twitch page of my website when I remember to do that. I really need to go scrub through our episodes. I think there's some links I need to put into some of the other areas as well. The good news is I made some tweaks to my Twitch account, so I think the VODs will stick around a little longer. That'll be nice. But in any case, I do have YouTube videos up, and I'm beginning to kind of get that filled in, but I do need to fill in some more information on that web page with some other information. Right. So where was I? I'm losing my train of thought here. Let's go here. And so that particular book, and this is kind of confusing, there's a site called ffmpeg.tv, which is not the ffmpeg site. This is the companion site to the book I just showed you. This is the site that sort of markets the book that I showed you and that I bought on Amazon because I wanted the actual book. I like books. I like, so the nice thing is I've not tried this. I have no idea if this is actually active, but it claims that you can buy a PDF version for about $10, which would be well worth it if you're going to use this thing at all. Because, as you'll see in a moment, ffmpeg's documentation is complete and really dense and hard to use. So there is among the links on this particular page, there is a link to the actual ffmpeg page, which is, I think, ffmpeg.org, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yes, I happen to be on it right now.
And so the downloads. So ffmpeg is kind of an interesting animal. The download link is source code only, and does it go straight to Git? No, it actually has a tarball on here, which is kind of weird, because it is a GitHub project, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Is it?
Nope. They host their own.
They host their own. That's why. Okay.
They mirror it to GitHub. That's what I was thinking.
That's what it was.
A lot of people will mirror it to GitHub, but they host their own Git repository.
Gotcha. So the download really is source code download. Then you would have to then compile it yourself. On Linux, where I first started playing with this, on most Linux distributions, a simple matter of either running RPM or apt and downloading it. All the package or all the distributions have it packaged up, right? So there's some annoyances in that ffmpeg, for example, on my Debian Linux machine complains that it was not compiled properly. It works just fine. It claims there's a mismatch. It lists all the libraries so you can spot the mismatch, and they're all identical. So it's just some weirdness. If I'm doing this on Linux, I just do apt install ffmpeg or whatever, and it does its thing. On Windows, and this is sort of it's not super uncommon on Windows. Windows or Mac OS. I don't know where is Mac OS Homebrew. Or is it what does he do on Mac OS?
I have no idea. Let me click on it. I think there is a homebrew build, but I don't think it is officially supported.
Not sure what they.
Yeah, they don't mention homebrew on
Mac OS is it's a static build.
Yep.
Which is on somebody else. Okay, so somebody else has built that. So it's similar to Windows. So if I go to Windows, there are basically a couple of people. I mean, enlarge this a little bit so it's more readable. So on Windows, there are a couple of people that build that pre-build Windows binaries. So I think I can't remember which one of those two I went to. I think this one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I think this is where I went to grab mine. Right. So I grabbed the full Git based, basically the newest version from these guys right here. And you end up with a 7Z encoded file. It's basically like a zip file. To make my life a little bit easier, what I did is this gets a little bit interesting because when you unpack this is not a Windows installer. It just it's basically a bunch of executables and some preset settings files that gets extracted to whatever directory you happen to be in. So what I chose to do is I actually did something a little bit Linux-like. I created a directory at the root of my system disk. And I called it local. I could have called it user local, but that would have been too Linuxy. And I stuck it in there. So if you extract, the ffmpeg download, this is what you get: a bin directory, a docs directory. I don't know. I haven't looked in there to see what's in there. Presumably, yeah, it's got the. Looks like it has a copy of the web-based documentation. Documentation on presets, a license file, a README file, and it has a bin directory with 3 executables. ffmpeg itself, which is kind of the Swiss Army knife tool that everybody uses. ffplay, which I didn't know existed, which is for lack of a better term, a minimal video player implementation. It has very few of the amenities. Earlier when I played the sample video, I played VLC. I played it in VLC. So ffplay has almost none of the amenities of any of the normal players, but it does work, right? And so if that's all you've got, it will certainly do the job. And of course, it has a lot of the same options built in as the other programs, so you can use ffplay to also display. Basically, it has there's something similar to that statistics display in VLC built in. And then ffprobe ffmpeg is, at least the idea is to use ffmpeg if you want to modify the video. So if you transcode it, upscale it, downscale it, crop it, change the colorization on it, whatever you want to do. We could take our videos and make them teal or something. I don't know what your color preferences are, but yes. Then ffplay is just basically a player, and an ffprobe is interesting because it is meant to display information about a file, which is kind of useful. And that's kind of where I'm going to focus on initially, although I think we're going to play around with ffmpeg a little bit as well, because we can sort of make some changes there. All right, so what I'd like to do then is in a PowerShell command prompt, what I want to be able to do is just invoke these commands. And since I'm on Windows, I'm going to have to I keep doing this. I want that one. There we go. I keep hitting the wrong key to make the magnifier go away. I'm not sure why. I have no idea what I'm doing to my computer either. I'm hitting Alt Escape, which I have no idea what that does. I hope it doesn't do anything bad. I have no idea what's bound to that key combination. So get myself sidetracked here. Before I go on, let me hop over back over to ffmpeg. I go back in here. And so there is very detailed information, but it is not meant for beginners or as a how-to. In fact, they list the ffmpeg basics book is part of the documentation, and I really almost think you have to have a book. I didn't try because I'd already bought the book. I should really figure out if that PDF download is still active. Well, let's find out. Because this book,
I can tell you, this is not meant for beginners. The ffprobe help output is 2,000 lines long.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like I said, this is not for the faint of heart. So can you actually buy a PDF version? So the book is. Let me see. Book came out, I want to say in 2012. Yeah, 2012. So it's what, 8 years old? But it's quite good. I mean, it's not something that I don't in the long run. I don't think I'm going to use like a lot because I don't work with video that much. But if you need to understand ffmpeg, I think it's at least a good starting point. I wonder if this actually is still alive. Yeah, look at that. You can actually send him some stuff by PayPal and send him some money via PayPal, and presumably you'll get a PDF. That wouldn't be half bad to have. So I suspect if you do the ffprobe tool, I suspect the help output is probably pretty much this, right? So what I found is if you know what you're looking for, and you have a syntax issue, or you're looking for a setting, this is where you want to go. But it will not tell you what it can do, or there's no synopsis. There are no examples, at least not very few. So yeah, so this wasn't the most useful thing in the world, which is why I bought the book. Right. So the So I've got my ffmpeg executables in this directory, but I really want them to work properly from a command prompt. So what I did, let me bring up the control panel here. This is the Advanced Systems Properties panel. enlarge that. So on Windows 10, the easiest way that I found, I know there's a control panel here somewhere. This used to be the properties of the computer object, and I think you can probably get to it still from that way.
You can.
Where's the computer object? Is it?
You go to it's this PC.
Oh, okay. So what I did is I hit the Windows key and did environment variables, and there's an edit environment variables control panel link there.
Yeah, I will give Windows 10 credit there. Hit Windows key, start typing works surprisingly well.
It works quite well, doesn't it? So let's see. You said so if I go to this PC and do properties, I get the same one.
Yeah, eventually there's an option. Yeah, but if you right click,
that's what I got.
And then there's an advanced system settings there.
There it is. That's the one. All right, so there, close that up. There we go. And if you click environment variables, now one thing I had not realized, and I was actually very happy about. So the environment variable we are after is the path, right? And it can potentially be a very long string, semicolon separated of different directories where the system is supposed to look for executables. Most people don't mess with this because installers will take care of that as needed. So I've got Python installed here, so it threw that, it threw itself in the path. But the nice thing is the new editor is really cool. Because it used to be that you just get a single text entry box, thousands of characters long. You had to kind of drag along and try to type stuff, edit stuff. Nowadays, apparently, and I had not actually run across this editor recently, so it actually splits the different entries apart and then puts them back together when you enter it. So notice that. So I have Python, a couple of Python directories, Python added. There's a Windows apps, local Windows apps directory that Microsoft presumably put there. VS Code puts itself in the path, and then I added local bin and local ffmpeg bin, so I should be able to call these programs up from PowerShell without having to go through typing in the path, which I wanted to avoid. Right, there is my. Right, so bring up my PowerShell window here, and let's see. There we go. Check me. Is that sort of readable? If anybody's in chat, tell me if it's readable.
Roughly so. You might go up one more.
How about there? At some point, we're going to run out of screen real estate here, but we'll see what we can do. Yeah. Right. So this is my PowerShell prompt, and so I should be able to say something like ffmpeg if I can type.
Typing.
And we'll ask for the version or something like that.
You do @-h and terrify everybody.
Good Lord, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Right, so this is nice because I can invoke ffprobe and ffmpeg and such. So I'm in the directory that I wanted to be in. So basically, the first thing I did when I first downloaded this is I just did this. So so the video we looked at is POE1.mp4. So why am I looking at all of this? It basically tells me how it was compiled, which I thought was kind of a lousy thing to do. Fortunately, there is a hide banner option, I think. Yep, there it is. And so So it's basically giving us more or less the same information we're getting from a media viewer. So the first block of information here is the container essentially. So it tells us that it gives us it's a minute 55 long. It tells us what the encoder was, and it again lists the bit rate as at 3548 kilobits per second, which is what we assumed it would be. And then it lists, so that it's 3548. Here's the information about the video stream. Again, it's an H.264 encoder, AVC encoder. It lists pretty much all the different parameters. It's a 1920 by 1080, so it records it as a 1080. 30 frames per second. Some of these things I do not know what they mean. I'll have to look them up. And again, roughly 30 megabits per second. And then the second stream here is the audio stream. It's AAC encoded, 48,000 hertz, so it's high quality audio. Stereo at 192 kilobits per second. So that accounts for the difference between the video bit rate and the file bit rate. The file bit rate, at least presumably, incorporates both the video and the audio bit rate. Okay, so this is cool, but at this point is where I needed the book, and I kind of dug through that a little bit, and so one of the options I really should have kept the documentation site up. Bring that back up. There we go. And I'm an ffprobe. Cool. So there is whoops. There is an option called show frames, which is which turns out to be pretty useful. Once I discovered that, I said, okay, let's play with that, because that would seem to get us closer to sort of our goal, right? If saying how can I sort of find out what happens during the streaming or the playback of the video. So that would be my next attempt here. Now this is this is a almost 2-minute video. So this is going to just spew data for a while. So I'm just going to run it and then just cancel it. All right. So what I'm going to do here is instead of in addition to hide banner, we're going to let's do a show frames. And one of the things that I didn't realize at first, and so I was getting really confused by things. Of course, when I ask it to show me all the frames, there of course are 2 streams, and I had not actually told it to only seek out one stream. So we're getting an interleaved audio and video being displayed here, and I don't want that. I just only want to see the video. And I think I sort of remember. Let me see if I can just search in here. So I think it's called select. Yeah, the select streams. And in this case, it actually has some examples which made life a little bit easier. So you can do select streams, and then so we only have one audio, one video stream. I can do V for video. So let's try. So let's do that. Select. I think it's streams with an S, isn't it? Yeah. And we want the video stream. Oh. Need a dash. All right. So now I think each one of these frames is video. It will show us a whole bunch of stuff about the. Okay, so this is sort of arbitrarily. So and again, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I do not understand. Right? I have not looked up all the stuff in here. One of the things that sort of makes sense, when you look at it, the packet duration time is 0.033. Since we're running 30 frames per second, that is 1/30th. So that makes sense. So each frame should be 1/30th of a second long. There's a packet size. So that's interesting. The width and height is 1920 by 1080, which we expected. Okay, so the other thing I noticed, which was kind of interesting, is it will tell us whether a frame is a keyframe or not. And this one is not a keyframe. So a keyframe would be one where the entire image, so one 1920 by 1080 image is transmitted. Non-keyframes are incremental. And this is a B frame, which is a bidirectionally interpolated frame, if I remember MPEG correctly. Have you ever I don't know if you've ever messed around with any of this stuff?
No, I don't believe so. What was the value we're looking at again?
I'm just looking at there are B frames and P frames.
No,
the P frames are projected frames, projected forward. The B frames, I think, are bidirectional interpolations.
Yeah, video for codecs are not my forte.
So one of the things that I thought might be fun to do is, and this one, I do have a cheat sheet here somewhere, but that I may have to look at. So this is PowerShell, not Linux command prompt, but I can still pipe stuff. And so what would be kind of fun to see is what I want to see is what are there's a P frame. Yep. So there are both B and P frames in here. So what I want to do is find out what the pick types are, and I think there's a way to do that. And I need to remember how to do that. Oh, that's right. I made some notes earlier so I could cheat and not bore everybody while I'm fumbling around with PowerShell references. So let's see if we can pipe this to select string. How's your PowerShell voodoo?
Not that good.
And we want to see only stuff that includes picked
I would
underscore
much rather.
type.
I say I'd much rather do this in Linux with grep.
Yeah, this is the grep equivalent.
Yeah.
That's every example you see on the web will have it piping to grep, and so this is the equivalent of grep. All right, and so let's see what we got here. I'm going to scroll up a little. All right, so there's an iframe, and then we get a whole bunch of B and P frames. Presumably there. So let's see. I'm curious how many iframes there are. Not very many. Look at that. I mean, it's still reading the stream.
It's still only like half dozen.
So far, we're what, at 6, 7?
I can't imagine how much
8?
data that emits. I did it on a 20-second file, and I got 50,000 lines of JSON out of it.
Yeah, this one, this output is super verbose in terms of the number of lines. Okay, so it looks like, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So in 2 minutes, 14 times. Yeah, the system 14. There are 14 full frames being transmitted, and everything else is interpolated. And this is for a high quality video, right? So kind of interesting. I thought there would be more iframes, to be honest, but given the high bit rate we gave it. But okay. So the next thing I figured out is there is a way to get more compact output. You can request different print formats, but as is typical here, the documentation says go look in another section for what you can actually put in here. So let's see if I can find it that way. Okay, so there is compact and CSV, and as it turns out, compact puts pipe symbols in between values and CSV commas, obviously. So that's a little bit more usable. So we're going to do that. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so now the thing that I found a little frustrating is there is no. Would it have hurt them that much to put out a header line?
Little things.
So I'm assuming. Let's see. Let me grab. Let's see. Where was one? Here. You grab one of these guys from frame to end of frame. Copy that. Let's see. All right. Let's move this over here somewhere, and can I make that bigger? Yeah. So now let's go back here. And let's see. In this case, it doesn't matter that you are sitting above it because I need to see one line here. So frame video, media type video, stream index 0. This is a keyframe, which would make sense. So I think it looks like the same order. What I really want to make sure is that there's packet duration 3000 time, which is a different unit. There's the time. Where is this? There. That should be the so if that's the time, which is easy to recognize in here. There's a packet position following that, I would assume. Not sure what that means. So whatever number is right before the 1920 1180 1080 should be the size of should be the packet size. The other thing we can do temporarily, I'm going to take that back off because I don't need it later. I think I can do this. Oh, nope. Yeah, so the size is in bytes.
I think you can change that if you use dash prefix. But I'll use SI prefixes.
I'm perfectly happy with it. I just want to know what it was. So I was okay. So I think we can kind of use this. I'm gonna move this back off here, out of view for a second. Okay. Let's pop you down there and pop you down there. It's a little less confusing. Okay, so we can do this. So we can get frame by frame information, and this isn't as bad, right? We're not getting as many lines of output because it's more compact. So now, what I want to do. I'm going to take the unit back off because I don't want that now. And now I want to pipe this to a file, which, how do I do that in? Oh, come on. Oh, there we go. So we pipe this to out file, and we'll tell it to stash this in. This is the original file, and we'll make it a CSV file. Let it crank through that.
Funnily enough, there's one piece of PowerShell juju I can hand off. But I think what you're trying to do, they actually support the stream operator from Bash, so the angle bracket
like
works.
the greater symbol.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you use the double angle bracket for append, but I do know the first one works.
Cool. I'll make it a little bit easier. There we go. And I think it just finished. Yep. Okay. So now we're going to do this the pedestrian way. And when I have to mess with a CSV file, my first hey, let me look at it is typically Excel. So we're gonna go look for I love Excel. Where is it? There we go. And it is comma delimited. So I want it delimited, comma, finish. All right. So there is our data. And looks like we have, let me scroll down here. Looks like 3,470 frames. So now I should be able to do something with this, right? So let me kind of compact some stuff here that I'm not terribly interested in. I don't need any of this stuff. So maybe I can just get rid of this. There we go. So if we were right, did I just get rid of the... yeah, I did, didn't I? Let's not do that. Where... oh, there. That's the one I wanted. Okay. So I get rid of this stuff. I want to keep the frame type around. Everything else I don't care much about. Okay. So what I should be able to do here, right? I'm doing this on the fly, so check me here. So I should be able to do, and by the way, let me go ahead and do a save here. Okay. So what we should be able to do here, right? We should be able. So we're pretty sure that this is the size. Right. That was there was one field between the time and the size, if I remember correctly. So I should be able to take the size. Divide that by the length of the frame, which will give me bits per second. And we want to probably convert this to, let's divide it by 1,000. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think the only caveat there is technically, because you're converting, you want to go to kilobits.
Yeah.
Technically 1024, right?
Because
we're
no,
computer scientists and we want base 2.
not kilobits when you're. Is it? Is that 1024?
I thought when we were converting bits and bytes, it's 1024 because we're computer scientists and we like everything to be orders of exponents of 2.
True.
That's a vague recollection from my courses back when I'm doing CS. So it rarely comes up.
There's a considerable. I think in networking we don't. I think in networking, networking uses the
proper SI.
The proper SI units.
I'd say it would not shock me. I just don't know in video codecs do they use.
I have no idea.
CS prefix doesn't really matter. Obviously, 24. It is. A computer scientist isn't going to care anyway because we want roughly the correct answer, not the exact answer when we're coming up with an algorithm anyway. So I'm not going to worry about it. It was just sort of popped in the back of my brain earlier today.
No, that's I have no idea, and I have no idea what we're getting here. So I'm gonna just drag this down. And let's see. God, I hate this. I hate this newfangled Windows interface. There. So, oh, and these were bytes. So if that I was going to say, there's something not right here. That's why. This is in bytes.
Yes, it did say bytes, didn't it?
Yep. So this would be kilobits per second. Right, so this would be close to the average rate. This one is clearly, this is 145 megabits per second. And I apologize. Nobody can see this. So if this is sort of kind of right, the I think this is, and I'm out on a limb here, right? Because I am most certainly not an expert in this stuff.
That seems high, doesn't it?
Well, let's do the math, right? What is the and of course I have to lead to this stuff now. It's 1920 by 1080.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, then you have to also do the bit depth for that, which is RGB. So let's see. Well, look, ODG is joining us. Welcome.
We're bashing our way through video codecs again.
Yes. So yeah, you're on quite late tonight, aren't you? Right. So all right. So how many? So I think we did this last time. Let's get our calculator.
Well, here we could sort of get a rough approximation. What's the
So
what was the size of that video
it's
file
1920
again?
by 1080.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 2 megapixel. It's 2 megapixels, right? OJ saying he was looking at ffmpeg last night. We were just running. And hello, heavy drinker. Welcome to the stream. So ODG, we just ran ffprobe and got and I've deleted some of the data I wasn't super interested in here. But what we did is there's like 3,000 frames here. What we did is we ran ffprobe and got the size of each frame, and obviously it's 30 frames per second, so so each frame has the same length. So now the question was, I think it's 8-bit per color channel, so it's 24, right? So we would this is the number of pixels. So I need 24 bits. I need 8 bits per color channel. Right?
That sounds right.
So that'd be that's megabits, not bytes. So that's about right. It's like a 10 megabit 10 megabits to store. That sounds about right. So that's number of bits. Yeah, look, that's about right. Remember, we're running 30 frames per second, so I only have 1/30th of a second.
Yeah.
Is that that would actually come out to so let's see. So this let's do it this way. So this let's convert this to bytes. That doesn't match, does it? This one is 600,000 bytes. Yeah, that doesn't match up. I have no idea.
Well, go through our units, right? Because we're looking for kilobits per second.
Let's make sure we did this right.
Yeah.
So what I do is I took the number of bytes, converted to number of bits. That
Right, 8 times bytes, 8 bits in a byte.
Then we have 0.0333 seconds. So I divide by that.
So yeah, so we have bits per second.
That would be bits per second, right? And I divide by 1,000 kilobits per second. So I think the mismatch is, I don't know. So you know what this says is if I'm trying to, if I were to try to send this as a raw file, I think okay. Here's yeah. So the raw image would be much bigger, but obviously I do the same thing I would do in JPEG. I run compression. So it's that's sort of unpredictable, right? So the actual image would be you know 6 megabytes. The actual frame is only 600 is only 0.6 meg. So there's about a factor 10 compression, which sounds about right for a JPEG. So it's not the same compression, right? I mean, this is an no, I think it's right, because what happens is the iframe is going to be much larger than anything else, and so on. So the average should drop down. In fact, these numbers are actually kind of so. What happens here is, I think. So remember, you know, we're so this is a P frame, which is one of the frames that projects video forward. So that one's considerably bigger. The B frames, are looks like they're the smallest ones, and so we get I've always assumed that this would be the case, that in an MPEG, in any sort of MPEG style H.264 encoded, anything that does keyframes and non-keyframes, you get bursty output, right? Because the iframe is always going to be considerably bigger than anything else. And so then I get the P frame, which takes more data. And remember, this video started out with, obviously it was fairly, easy. So notice that now I'm at. Let's make sure that this actually copied correctly. See, remember the video started out with pretty static, right? Because so let me bring this thing up and pause it. It's this guy here, right? So the beginnings, the first bit of the video is pretty static. So when we get into if I get further into this file, I notice that right about here the numbers get considerably bigger for the intermediate frames. They're still not as big as the keyframes. There's another keyframe. That's a factor. That's a factor 2 at least bigger. But the intermediate frames are suddenly getting a lot bigger, right? So this had to have been some sort of transition where something was
Well,
happening on the on screen.
right. Likely. I mean, honestly, the zone transitions probably would be because it's almost essentially every single pixel changed.
So this is well, this is about 8 seconds in. So I wonder where that is. This
I don't know. Pull up the video. What's it?
yeah,
8 seconds.
I'm trying to go there. I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to get there. It's it's this. It's a zone transition. Yeah. So it has to. It has to basically recover because it was a scene change. Interesting enough, it did not inject. I think the iframe. ODG. I'm not sure. Yeah, the iframes are compressed. I was assuming that. When you say can you capture the actual frames and compare them, I'm not sure what. I mean, I think we could probably extract them, but
Yeah, presumably ffprobe would give us some sort of a matrix of the pixel values somehow.
I have you can dump the hex. Yes, you can dump the hex data if you wanted to. I have not even begun to think about how one would process that. So now we're like 25 seconds in. All right, so that's got to be over here somewhere. So this, yeah. We're here in the video, and if you look, we again get this. That's an iframe, but we get some fairly large data rates here. So ODG is saying, can you capture the B frame with the ffprobe to link to the data to the picture? Yeah, that would be a lot of work. You could, I think, because there is a dash hex option, I think, in ffprobe that will actually dump the content of the frame. But one thing, you end up with a very large file, and then you'd have to reconstruct the image, knowing how it's encoded. So that's probably more work. I was really more interested in. So we're running. Remember, the average for this file is 30 megabits per second, right? So so can I do a running average here? I have no idea. How would I do that?
I'm not an Excel guru. That being said, I imagine there's a command for it.
I'm sure there is, but
there's apparently a data tab with a data analysis button that allows you
oh
to
yeah, no,
find a moving average.
I'm not going to necessarily do that here, but especially not. I mean, we're not at 9:15, so. So clearly I could go in and basically do computer running average, just eyeballing it, right? The numbers are you get a little bit of spike anytime we hit an iframe. Let me jump to one here if I can find one. So we said the entire file only had like 16 iframes in it. Look, there's a P frame that is huge. Yeah, that's got to be that transition where we're going from one scene to another. But yeah, I could, I can sort of believe. I mean, I can see numbers well above 30. I can see numbers well below 30. So so I can kind of believe that. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to do it on stream. I'm always willing to try all sorts of stuff on stream, but yeah, I think I'm going to play with that a little bit off stream. But as they say, that the details are the left as an exercise to the reader. No, but there are various ways of doing that. We could graph. Obviously, what we want to do is graph this, right? So so one thing I could probably do, if I remember how to do this properly. Actually, because these are equidistant, I really would only need to do something like this. Oh God, I hate this. I hate this so much. The one thing that it should be in. Oh, there we go. I could do that way. Well, what location range? What are you talking about? Spark lines. I don't know what the hell that is.
What are we looking for?
All I want to do is graph this. All right, we can do it this way. I think this is what it's asking for. Column, and we put you right here. I have no idea. I've used graphs in Excel a lot, but not in this version. And I have absolutely no idea what on earth this is doing. Oh, this is spark lines. I don't want spark. That's why. I have no idea what that is. Charts. Chart is what I wanted. There. There we go. Pretty. All right, so obviously I'm not graphing enough here, right? But I just wanted to see if this would work. So now let's delete that. And what I want to do is grab a bit more data. There we go. That should be better. God, I used to be really good at this. I just want a regular bloody TD columns, whatever. All right, let's expand this out a bit. Yeah, I know. I think this works though. The spikes here are either iframes or the p frames during a scene change. The average is right around between 20 is supposed to be 30,000 on this scale. I kind of believe that if you look at it.
Yeah, a couple of outliers that would throw it
Yeah,
off
you've
a
got
tiny
some
bit.
outlier. I mean, over the entire file, it's about 30. So I can buy that. I can buy that. Okay. Right. So let's see what time it was. 9:20. I just wanted to really really quickly hop into. Let's close this out. So let's do one other thing real quick. So what I'm going to do is recode this thing. Just just because I thought it was kind of interesting to see what happens if you try to push, push this a little bit. So this is a 30 megabit. Yes. Yeah. ODG. Look. I've used. The problem is I've used Excel on Mac OS for decades. Well, not. I don't know. It's been out that long for many years, more than a decade. The user interface on the Macs, the Mac Excel Mac team and the Windows Excel team must be quite different because the user interface is very different. And so I always have to kind of find things when I switch between platforms. Embarrassing, I know, but it's all there, and I can do this better, and I'll come up with something better. But what I want to do to kind of wrap up is, OG, you were talking about doing some recoding, and all of this is I was really sort of trying to understand video quality as it relates to bitrate, right? So one of the things so let's do this So now I'm going to use ffmpeg instead of ffprobe. Want to hide that stupid banner. Right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to start with my this POE1 file. What do I want to do here is I want to, and the only reason I know what these are is that I've played with them and I have a cheat sheet on my other monitor. Otherwise, I'd have to dig each one of these in turn up on the documentation. So let's focus on the video streams bitrate and force it down to something more sensible, like, I don't know. Real media. There's so ODG is saying he was trying to convert some real media RM files so you get thumbnails in Windows. The sizes were doubled. Real media. Oh God, I haven't touched one of those things in a long time. All right. So what should we push the video frame rate down to? Let's do a megabit. So let's do I think it's like 1 M. I think will work. I think capital M is mega, right? I think that for ffmpeg megabits.
That sounds correct to me. Yeah.
Right, and so let's call this POE1-1M. MP4. So let's see. So let's have it recode this video from its high quality state. Let's force it down to a 1 megabit per second bit rate on the video, and then it obviously adds the audio. And so this one shows the instantaneous bit rate as it's encoding, and it looks like it's oscillating around, as you would expect, around 1 megabit per second by 1,000 kilobits per second. If they're real media, you definitely had some old files lying around. To add frame rate and async settings, otherwise my sound, it's a mess. All right, so this is roughly so the iframes are roughly the same. It stuck with about 18 iframes. 1,000 P frames, about 2,400 B frames. All right, so now, got so many windows open here. All right, so where is this guy? There. Let's grab media info and see if that file actually came out the way we expected it to. All right, so it did recode it as we know it's an MPEG-4. It stayed with the same codec. target bit rate. By the way, well, this one at least agrees with me. It's I said 1M, and it converted that to 1,000 kilobits per second, not 1024.
You know, nobody can agree on that.
Yeah.
Drive
ODG,
me
we
nuts.
had this discussion earlier. You know, I was doing the math, and PX Slip was saying, shouldn't you use 1024 instead of 1,000? I said, no, we're networking people. We use the real SI units. And the minute we describe storage in a computer, it becomes 1024.
1024.
So, yeah. All right, so okay, so looks like it did what we wanted it to. Yep. All right, so let's see what that looks like. So we've got this file now. And so I don't know if it's going to be sort of hard to see. Let me see. I'm going to make this bigger at the risk of just being able to see a portion of it on screen. It won't let me do that. I think as soon as if you look carefully, actually here, let's do this. If you look carefully, as soon as I'm moving, as soon as there's movement in the screen, I think you can see the blocking effect. Yeah, binary computers. So if you look carefully in this, you can see the blocking effect in the where there just isn't enough bit rate to there just isn't enough bit rate to do a good job. Although it's the other thing that I noticed is let's do this. There we go. The part of the video where I am, because I'm not moving, that actually is reasonably decent quality, because it's because it doesn't take very much of the interpolated frames to do that. So kind of predictable, right? If we push the bit rate too far down without making other compensations, obviously things will fall apart. So so one thing I was playing around with before stream is to resize this to one of the built-in sizes that the scales that ffmpeg understands is what they call WVGA, which is VGA is what, 640 by 480. This is the 16 by 9 equivalent, 480 tall, but wider to make it to keep it 16 by 9. And obviously, I want this to be MVGA, something like that. Let's see what we get this time. And obviously, the file sizes are going to presumably be considerably smaller. Alright, so the 1 meg one we just created earlier is 15 meg instead of 400 meg, and then the one that I just created, this guy here, it's about this. Interesting enough, it compressed down to about the same. Didn't save any file size by doing that, and that's kind of interesting. Let's see if it actually did what we wanted it to. There's media info. Let's grab this guy. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, so it went to 852 by 480. So that's roughly, should be roughly it's a quarter of the pixels, right? It cut the height in a bit more than half. And presumably, if we play this guy, right? So it's a much smaller image, of course, and if I enlarge it on screen, what we'll see now is that it looks smoother. It won't have that blocking effect, but obviously it doesn't have the resolution, right? And yeah, 320 is 320 is that's half VGA. That's right. That was a quarter. The 320. OG was saying that his files with I guess was working with 320. That's a quarter of a VGA screen, right? So if you look carefully here. The image is much lower resolution, of course, but it's relatively smooth, right? There's none of the sort of square blocking effect, which I thought was kind of interesting. Right, and if we if we run an analysis on this guy now, presumably each of the frames is going to be much smaller because it's much more highly compressed. And the iframes really can't be any smaller, though, can they? Let's find out. Okay, let's do it with that 1M. And I'm just going to do it on screen here. I'm not going to dump it out anywhere, and we're not going to... and it was -1M. Alright, so it should start with an iframe, I would think. Trying to find my actually I have that cheaper, right? I could so that looks, that's an iframe, isn't it? Yeah, and it's roughly the same size, 113,758. So it's relatively large. So that would argue that. So let's do this. Let's search for. Let's grab this for packet size. Yeah, so we're going to hit some we're going to hit the average. So what happens is the codec in this example, the codec, when we tell it it can't use more bit rate, the codec will limit what can go into the B and P frames. It still has to encode the iframes because that, it has to send the full image. So it's kind of interesting. You always have to do some amount of buffering, because when an iframe to get an iframe in takes considerably longer, potentially, than that 30th of a second, depending on the bandwidth. So you always have to do a little bit of buffering to account for the fact that it might take a moment to collect and process the iframe, and then the following frames will build up more quickly. So that's kind of what I wanted to look at. So it's it's not the easiest tool in the world to use. Certainly not without tracking down some documentation. But I think at some point you have to kind of use a low-level tool to get at this kind of stuff. So one of the things is what I wanted to wrap up with, and we kind of had this discussion really briefly before the beginning of the stream. What I would love to do, because what I did here, I mean, even if I didn't forget half of how to use Excel, which is kind of embarrassing. Using Excel isn't. I mean, it works, but using Excel for what could conceivably. I mean, this was a 2-minute video, right? So you end up with tens of thousands of rows in Excel really quickly, which it can handle, but it's just not a terribly comfortable way to maneuver.
No, it's a little unpleasant.
So how would I architect something that would automate this? So ffprobe is kind of set up to give us what we want, right? It'll spit out this a record per frame. So that's kind of a good starting point.
Well, and it has a number of useful formats. So we can do, like you saw in CSV. It'll also happily output into JSON if we want to import into something a little bit more more robust. So I mean, the first step is getting the data, right? So we were talking briefly about this earlier, but you can. I think it's well within the license terms of ffprobe. I'd have to double check which license they're under, but generally you can include the compiled binary with a script, essentially just basically pass around a script with a binary for Linux, for most Linux distros, Mac and Windows, and just select the right one based on some environment variables.
Right, I mean, I have not looked at the license file.
I'd have to.
It's in that directory. I'll just bring it up, right? Okay. But I know that ffmpeg is, and in fact, the book, the ffmpeg basics book, claims that YouTube and Netflix use ffmpeg for their own encoding.
Oh, it's everywhere.
But I know that I have like video editing. Open source video editing software that is very much internally based on ffmpeg, and many of them distribute with ffmpeg built in.
Exactly. So do you embed ffmpeg as a binary, or do you expect your user to have ffmpeg or ffprobe, or ffmpeg specifically with ffprobe installed as a secondary component?
Let's set that one aside for a minute, because I was trying to sort of architect, how would I write a piece of software that kind of automates that?
I define that a little bit. So like automates putting it out as a chart, something along the lines of that bitrate visualizer screenshot we looked at earlier.
Right. Yeah, and it basically, I think. Oh, and ODG was saying something along the lines. There certain codecs they can't use. Most of them have been written by others to use. So there's another layer here, and that's why ffmpeg distributes is modular, and so that kind of makes things a little bit more interesting. But when you build so there are encumbered codecs where you have to watch the license agreements for the codecs to build in there. So yes, there's a bit of an issue. There's a bit of an issue as to what codecs can you distribute with. Anyway, so all right, so let's just set that aside for a minute. Let's assume for a second, if there's a license issue. You ask the user install whatever's legal for them to install, right? Or whatever they want to use. So data comes out of ffprobe.
Yep.
Where do we go from there?
Big old chunk of data, right?
Yep. And ultimately, ultimately that that Excel, that quick Excel chart that I produced there, basically what we want is to more or less automatically generate something that looks like that, right?
Yeah.
Maybe with some statistics on the side, like that other, so what
hoverability, smatterability.
Since that was kind of off stream, I mentioned last week this old program called Bitrate Viewer, which does essentially this. It does essentially what I have on screen here, as a kind of a standalone exe. It is not supported. When you install it, you have to trust that it hasn't been corrupted by somebody, because there's no signature or anything. There's no no hash or whatever, which I'm not going to do. But so basically, that kind of a chart is what we're after. So what do we use to
Right.
produce that?
I mean, at its simplest, I would probably not do it manually. Now there you
No.
could, right? You know, there are a number of plotting tools out there that will either generate a static image, or the one I poked around a little bit ago and located a little open source Python script that will spin up a web server and give you an interactive graph based on a whole bunch of Panda data. So you can hand it a Panda data frame, have it automatically refresh so we can actually stream the data in as it comes in instead of having to wait for the entire thing to.
Yeah, that would be lovely, especially for longer, and especially if you could basically throw older data out or whatever. But if it's if it's like a 5-minute video, it'd be kind of nice to see that build up as it comes in. That was one of the things I was thinking about.
Yeah, so this one, I mean, honestly, that I would
And
throw it at
ODG's
that.
just to keep up with the chat here. ODG was saying there's a PHP library called PHP Chart Director. Okay. So something PHP is not. I mean, I've done a little bit of Python. I have definitely not done PHP.
And PHP is my day job,
Yeah,
so um,
but
I would
that sounds
probably,
kind of interesting.
yeah, I'd be, well, it's
Yeah,
internalized and a little overdone.
again, following up with the ODG VBA. If you're running Excel, then I agree VBA could probably do the job. But
I would be honest. Well,
I think I want
VB,
to stand. I think I want to stand alone.
I mean, and I would argue that's not entirely true anymore. Excel has pushed away from sort of
Oh, that's right.
macros.
They have.
Really don't want you automating Excel except
Yeah.
for through authorized plugins. So
Yes.
VBA is actually a pain in the neck to use these
Actually
days.
get to use because
To turn it on, and you
they
have
get
to
hacked. So they get
manually.
hacked with
Yeah,
macros so often that
yeah,
that's kind of nailed down. All
yeah.
right.
So,
So
and as far as a language to use, I'd really rather avoid VBA.
yeah. No, I agree. So Python.
Yeah, so I would argue for Python just because it does, I mean, it has Panda, so it has Panda and NumPy, right? So you get a lot of the really straightforward large data set
Oh,
tools.
NumPy's the one I couldn't remember. That's
hmm
right. That's where.
So,
Yeah.
because we are handling, we are theoretically dealing with, if you handed an hour or two long video, you're dealing with
There's
hundreds
hundreds
or
of thousands of
thousands
frames.
of
Yeah.
frames. So your data set is big enough that you probably want something that is designed
To handle
around.
large data. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this open source library called Dash, and it's essentially it's one of those commercial open source projects, which I'm a big fan of. I think it's a really good way to make open source work. It's basically, here's our open source version. It does pretty much everything the enterprise version will do. There's some odds and ends that we don't include, but if you want good support and hosting and stuff like that, come pay us, and we'll do that for you.
Okay. Okay. By the way, it's
So
roughly 100,000 frames for an hour.
okay, well, not as big as I was afraid of, but the minute you cross 2 hours,
That's at
3 hours, it's like,
30 frames per second times
well,
3,600
yeah,
seconds,
right.
right?
So double that if you go 60 frames,
Yeah.
and it starts getting relatively large, relatively fast.
Yep.
And I would say with PHP, I'd be concerned about dealing with 100,000 data points. I
Yeah.
just it
Even with
doesn't
it.
have a
Yeah.
great internal data storage mechanisms, right? Its dictionaries are not particularly performant, and that's just speaking as someone who writes PHP all day long. Um, Point being, yeah, Python has become the de facto standard for doing this sort of stuff. So basically, take the output, either a piped file, or
Yeah.
not manually, use the spawn library to spawn a process.
That runs ffprobe and pull the
Yep. Pull the data out.
pull sys out into
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Basically, stream the data from it and just start updating a dictionary there. And then there's a render callback basically that happens every once in a while. But the Dash basically just spins up a local web server. And then you can actually add filtering tools. So you could basically add, filter by the frame type and
Yeah.
other fixed values. So no, I think if I were to build it, it would actually be surprisingly straightforward. So it might be an interesting little.
well, maybe we can have some more conversations off stream about I mean, I know you're working LST, but I may need some pointers. There's no way I can write kind of JavaScript stuff you're creating for LST, but Python I can handle if I have some ideas on what
Oh, we can,
packages to
yeah.
start with.
It'd be a fun chance to sort of collaborate at some point. We can do it
Yeah.
on stream, sort of random streams too.
Yep, but we might well do that in a create because it seems like it's such a it's such a ODJ says chart it mentioned Chart Director, which is a chart maker for web-based apps, but really then it would be on the back end, so it might be slow to get a client. That's the problem. That's the problem I've had with web front ends into large data sets. If you're not careful, it takes forever to load the stuff into the client.
If I were building this as a pure web app, which technically Dash is, but it's all running locally and it's already sort of integrating what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
If I were building it as a web app, I would probably ignore chart making on the back end, use D3, which is a data visualization library that's pretty robust. D3 on the front end, and just use a WebSocket to stream data to it.
Yeah.
So you could just basically have a WebSocket that emits new data every couple, every half second or so, and just you update a JavaScript variable. In fact, I'm thinking of rewriting. You might remember this. Years and years ago, I was on break for work and I needed a project. I wrote that JS plot library.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, we used that in a class for quite a while. I'm not sure if it's in use anymore. I haven't taught that class in a long time.
Yeah, I
handed that off, but
yeah. I think it'd be an interesting opportunity to rewrite this with some of those tooling. I think I could make it more performant because it was not the most performant tool. It was an interesting challenge.
It was tough. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I guess it's sort of frustrating to me that everybody's relying on this tool. It's like 10, 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I don't come up when a bitrate viewer goes back to like 2008 or something, maybe even earlier, and it's never been updated. It's not safe in the sense that anybody could basically create a compromised copy of it, and there's just really no way to protect it because there is no developer to sign it. So if you try to install it, you're installing something that's by definition unsigned and potentially dangerous, and yet everybody uses it because it's the only thing out there. Well, I take that back. There is there are some commercial products that that are meant for other purposes, but that have that same sort of functionality. But they start at like $300-400 per seat, up to like $1,500 per seat. And this is a very simple functionality, right? So, it seems silly that if you're just wanting to, analyze the time sequence of a video, that you have to rely on something that's kind of that old and broken. And if it's not hard to build, I just as soon, maybe create something modern and put it out on GitHub and let people pull it down.
Yeah. I mean, especially if we can,
So I'm going to take a look. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at that and see if we can't create something that works that way.
I'm pretty sure, ODG. I'm pretty sure, ffmpeg just comes wrapped up in OBS. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I believe ODG was saying if you look in OBS, he thinks you might find ffmpeg in there, and I think you're right. I think that's almost nobody. This stuff is hard, and you have to deal with multiple codecs, and it just
weird, quirky implementations.
Yeah, I think a lot of developers wisely aren't trying to build their own. And so ffmpeg is sort of the de facto. Everybody wraps their. I think that's one of the reasons why the documentation is so dense. It's really meant for developers. It's not. It's not meant for end users, unless you're an advanced end user. But it's not meant for a casual end user. So I think that's why it is so hard to wrap your head around how to use the different settings on it. I think once you get a start into it, it becomes a little bit more intuitive as you go. But Anyway, so I think that's what I think. Here's where I think is a good stopping point. I need to really give some thought to maybe you and I can chat off stream a little bit about the architecture, and then I think I'm very much interested in building something around that. Just I think it'd be really cool, and if it works, and as a way to sort of replace that bitrate viewer program, that would actually be kind of a nice service to folks like. Folks that have to deal with kind of streaming video, in particular.
Yeah.
ODG, I think, or PXF, can you check? I think my system claims that Resurrection Fern is on, so I suspect we're just going to go ahead and raid her. She may be just starting. But I never trust Twitch to display the correct number of viewers anyway. So I'm going to say goodnight at this point. I'm going to pop up our outro screen, and we'll try to raid Resurrection Fern's channel, and I'll see you guys over there. She was on when okay, so
she is. Yeah, she looks like she's on still.
All right, so we will. So let me close our stream here, and we'll see you over in Resurrection Fern stream. And thank you very much for watching.